investigators say someone murdered that mother and took her unborn child.
The talk at Gary's Bar and Grill on this night centered on the house just south of town, Lisa Montgomery's home.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel or simply not yet subscribed, definitely make sure to hit that subscribe button. We're going to be talking about a pretty heavy case today. I've had this case typed up for a while, and it is quite disturbing on so many levels. So full disclosure, viewer discretion is advised. Let's dive right in. Bobby Jo Stinnet was a 23-year-old dog breeder who was very excited to be having her first baby with her husband, Zeb Stinnet. Now, they were high school sweethearts, and Bobby Jo and Zeb were striving to go from their small rental cottage to a new home to raise their baby. She was 8 months pregnant when Lisa Montgomery would get in contact with her online to inquire about rat terrier puppies Bobby Jo was selling. Lisa said that she was also pregnant, so obviously the two started to bond. Shortly after, on December 16th, 2004, Lisa Montgomery would drive from her home in Kansas to Bobby Jo's home in Missouri. As far as Bobby Jo was aware, it was to buy a puppy. As the two were talking inside Bobby Jo's home, Lisa attacked her. She strangled Bobby Jo until Bobby Jo lost consciousness. Then Lisa proceeded to use a kitchen knife to cut into Bobby Jo's stomach, at which point Bobby Jo would start to wake up. Can you imagine that? They fought, and Lisa ended up strangling Bobby Jo to death. Then she went on to remove the 8-month-old baby from Bobby Jo's body and kidnapped the baby. She would go on to try to pass the baby girl off as her own, even to her own husband, who she had been lying to that she was pregnant. Bobby Jo's mother, Harper, would become worried when her daughter never showed up to bring her to a garage so that she could have her truck fixed. Because she was worried, she decided to go and check on her daughter. That's when she would discover a sight that she would never forget. She saw the gruesome scene of her daughter's mutilated body and her missing granddaughter. In Bobby Jo's hands, police had found her assailant's blonde hair. And after some investigating, police learned about Lisa Montgomery due to emails that they found between Lisa and Bobby Jo.
On this rural location.
Apparently, Lisa Montgomery told her family, "I've delivered the baby, quote, come pick me up."
So she doesn't work here anymore because she had a baby? Supposedly.
I had hoped that we had a live baby and that we needed to focus on that.
An infant girl was brought to Stormont Vale Hospital.
I asked the sheriff whether or not this is indeed the baby. He said, yes, it appears to be.
The baby is here tonight, we are told, remarkably doing well.
With the help of the Amber Alert system, Bobby Jo's baby was found alive and rescued. Baby Victoria Jo was released from the hospital the night before her mom would be buried in Skidmore. Victoria Jo was given back to her father, Zeb Stinnet, and Zeb would raise their little girl with the help and support from both sides of their family. So obviously, we just dove straight in there. So now we're going to jump back a little bit. And before we really take a deep dive on Lisa, we're going to talk about some other cases real quick. So there are around 30 cases of female predators who steal unborn babies. This act has been labeled womb raiding, fetal snatching, or cesarean kidnapping. It's rare, but extremely dangerous for, obvious reasons. And it's an extremely dangerous form of stalking. The woman gets so desperate to have a baby for, there's so many different reasons that could be, that they get, like, where they feel like there's no other option but to literally kill and steal it. 1986, Darcy Pierce was a 19-year-old woman who was married. She abducted Cindy Ray near a prenatal clinic in New Mexico. Darcy strangled the mom and then proceeded to use car keys to remove the unborn baby girl. She then tried to get a birth certificate from a local hospital, but they required to do an exam. Obviously, the exam showed that she was never pregnant and she never gave birth, and she was caught. Darcy was found guilty and mentally ill, and she received only a 30-year prison sentence, which I feel like that should just be life. So what tends to happen is the predator will aim to gain the victim's trust, along with making people around them believe that they're actually pregnant. They will fake ultrasound, or like you can use those maternity bump things to try on different maternity clothes. Like they'll use things like that, these things, so that when they suddenly appear with this baby, nobody questions it. They may also announce a miracle birth or say that something went wrong. When the date approaches, the predator will lure its victim to a private location or will visit the victim's home. Then she will kill or make the victim unconscious while then proceeding to use a sharp tool such as a knife, keys, scissors, or a box cutter. And you know, they plan all of these things and they get so wrapped up with just getting the baby that they don't think about what happens after they have the baby. And that's usually how they get caught. In 2006, there was a case in Illinois where a woman by the name of Tiffany Hall murdered her close friend, Jamila Tunstall, in order to get her baby. She also drowned her 3 children. She left their bodies in the family's washer and dryer. Now, this was a close friend. More commonly, these cases will be from women that really want children and can't have children of their own, or have lost a child. They just think that having a baby will complete them. Now, there are plenty of cases, though, where the woman actually does have children of her own already, though. Norma Jean Armstead was an OB nurse. Her lover was married and had a family. So he had threatened to leave her. He was like, we're going to end this affair. I just want to be with my wife. And she thought, oh, if I can give him a baby, he'll stay. She had already had a hysterectomy, though. So she decided to come up with a plan. In 1974, Norma Jean targeted a woman by the name of Mary Childs. Mary had arrived at the hospital, had given birth, and Norma Jean drugged Mary and stole the baby girl. And she replaced, this is horrible. I mean, this whole thing is horrible, but she replaced the baby with a stillborn. She was a trusted nurse, so nobody batted an eye. However, this baby was a girl and her lover wanted a boy. So she gets away with it this first initial time. And because she wanted this guy to stay with her, she decides to do it again. And this time she made mistakes. She ended up checking herself and the baby into the hospital. The doctor was like, no, you didn't give birth any time recent. Police had discovered that she had taken this baby from a woman by the name of Catherine Veramontes, who had had her baby removed and the baby was missing. The investigation had shown that Norma Jean had faked medical records of her pregnancy 9 months earlier and then used hospital records to find her next victim. The first ever documented case of cesarean abduction happened in 1974 by a woman by the name of Winifred Ransom. She had attacked Margaret Sweeney and stole her child. When Margaret started to regain consciousness, Winifred struck her repeatedly with a hatchet and then shot her. She then buried Winifred's body. She then buried Margaret's body beneath the floorboards in the kitchen. 3 days later, she went to the police. Officers found the hatchet and the body. At the trial, it was argued that Winifred's inability to have her own baby had triggered a psychotic delusion, and she was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Ransom was acquitted on the basis of insanity, and she was sent to a psychiatric hospital for a short period of time. So let's dive back into Lisa Montgomery. In the case of Lisa Montgomery, she had been abused literally her entire life. She had 4 children, but had lost custody, and in 1990 had a tubal litigation procedure that had made it so she couldn't have kids anymore. She had falsely claimed to be pregnant a few times. Her defense attorney had actually attempted to argue the defense of cytosis, which is the delusional belief that you're pregnant. Because sometimes like women want a kid so much that they, and say like they have a false, it's rare, but a false pregnancy test that comes up positive. Their body will actually start mimicking certain things because they want a kid so bad. So even though they're not pregnant, they might gain some weight. They might, their breasts may hurt. Things like that. Because, and again, like some pregnancy symptoms often mimic period symptoms. However, the prosecution firmly disagreed. Lisa Montgomery had carried out a calculated long-range plan that indicated that she knew right from wrong and decided to act anyways. In October 2007, a jury in the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Missouri found Lisa Montgomery guilty of federal kidnapping resulting in death and unanimously recommended a death sentence. Her conviction and sentence were affirmed on appeal, and her request for collateral relief was rejected by every court that considered it. She was scheduled to be executed by lethal injection on December 8th, 2020 at the U.S. Penitentiary Terre Haute, India. The date was then moved to January 12th, 2021. A last-minute stay of execution was granted by a federal judge, but then overturned by Supreme Court. And Lisa Montgomery was executed the following morning. Obviously, what she did was unforgivable. But did she deserve the death sentence? Now we're going to take a deep dive into Lisa's life, and you guys can decide for yourself. Lisa was first SA'd at the age of 3. Although this happened indirectly, Lisa had shared a bed with her half-sister Diane. The bed was small, so they would be very close together. When Diane was 8 and Lisa was 3, Diane was SA'd by their male babysitter, with Lisa laying directly next to her. At the age of 11, Lisa Montgomery would be SA'd herself for the first time. Her stepfather, Jack Kleiner, was a mean drunk and just an all-around just horrible guy. He would regularly beat Lisa's mother, and he started SAing Lisa 1 to 2 times a week. The assaults became so common and so important to Jack that he even built a room for Lisa on the side of their trailer in Oklahoma. The room would have its own entrance, so he could come and go as he pleased. And no one would know and no one would hear Lisa's screams. This guy is a straight up monster. Her stepfather would continue to SA her and sometimes sodomize her, often while covering her face with a pillow. When Lisa would resist, he would slam her head so hard against the concrete floor that she had suffered from a traumatic brain injury. One time, Lisa's mother walked in during the abuse. And instead of acknowledging this heinous act that Jack was doing to her daughter, Judy instead took a gun and held it to Lisa's head, her own daughter, and shouted, "How could you do this to me?" I can't even explain how angry that makes me feel. Over time, the abuse would get worse. The stepfather would invite friends to gang Lisa in the room, and this would last hours. And it would normally end with the men urinating on her. Her own mother would even start selling Lisa's body to other people, like a plumber or an electrician, whenever she needed jobs done around the house. From a young age, her mom would duct tape her mouth just to prevent Lisa from talking and would make her stand outside on the porch naked in front of drunken visitors, being told that if she made even the slightest noise, that she would be sent to a home, which probably honestly would have been better than this. The stepfather even cut a hole in the closet so he could watch Lisa in her room when she was home from school. Lisa would curl up in the only blind spot in the room for hours just to avoid his vision. Social workers had paid the family a visit once during Lisa's childhood, and they called her parents ahead of time. It infuriates me so much because this is really common, where it's supposed to be a surprise visit so then they can, actually make a more accurate determination of, is this child safe? And they call ahead of time. Kids literally lose their lives over this. So because her parents knew that, the social workers are coming, Lisa was made to keep quiet. There's also a doctor in Oklahoma who had examined Lisa and had learned about the regular SA, but did nothing to stop it. The child welfare office, who Lisa's mother informed about the abuse, did nothing. Even the family court judge that presided over Lisa's mom and the stepfather's divorce had scolded Judy over failing to report the abuse, police, but then did nothing further. I don't know why this little girl was not taken out of this home. While Lisa was a teenager, she did confide in her cousin, who was a deputy sheriff, about what was happening with the stepfather and the other men. Lisa had begged him not to tell anyone because she was afraid that her stepfather would kill her. She also told one of her stepbrothers about the abuse. She told him that she would go away in her mind and try not to be present. Jack Kleiner was never charged for the abuse that Lisa endured. And Judy all but forced Lisa to get engaged to her stepbrother at 17. They got married when she was 18, and he also abused her. He SA'd her and burned her, and Lisa gave birth to 4 children and then was made to have surgery to prevent her from having any more. With all of this abuse, Lisa would start to disassociate. Her mental health would just deteriorate more and more, and her behavior became erotic. By the time she was 34, Lisa had moved 61 times. She divorced and then remarried. She got in multiple car accidents, struggled to keep a job, constantly moved, drank excessively, engaged in sex work, and neglected her children. She became so disassociated that her children would call her Martha instead of Mom, just to pull her out of the trance. Lisa was prone to delusional thinking. I mean, she literally had to escape all of this abuse that she endured her entire life. So she created a world in her head. At least 5 times after she could no longer have kids, she told other people that she was pregnant. Only 2 days before she had committed this horrible crime with Bobby Jo. Her ex-husband had filed for custody of their 2 children. At this time, she had told her husband that she was currently pregnant, which her ex-husband knew was impossible. So he threatened to expose her and said that the imagined pregnancy would be enough for him to gain custody of these children. This literally pushed Lisa, like, she was probably teetering on the edge, but this pushed her over the edge. And then she went to the home of Bobby Jo Stinnet. He killed her, stole her baby, and pretended it to be her own. While in prison, Lisa received intense psychiatric care and analysis, which she should have probably been getting all along. She was diagnosed with bipolar, PTSD, anxiety, depression, mood swings, psychosis, dissociation, and memory.
She lived in 61 homes in 34 years. What happens to that child?
She went beyond punishment.
Diane says you can't imagine what happened as punishment. The brutal cold showers, being stripped.
She would strip me down naked, say I can't take nothing with me, and push me outside. It felt like forever. You couldn't trust that this was my home.
Diane says she bears the scars. She can't be in small rooms with men. She can't eat onions. They trigger her to this day because that was a punishment that delighted her stepmonster.
She got pleasure making me eat raw onions.
Diane says she's heartbroken for what happened to Bobby Jo Stinnet and her baby daughter.
My heart goes out to the family that lost their daughter, that lost their mother, that lost their wife.
She understands Lisa should never be free, but she also can't understand the justice in her sister's death. KCTV5 reviewed numerous doctor's notes and legal exhibits as part of our investigation. Here's what those reveal. Montgomery has been diagnosed with bipolar, anxiety, PTSD, borderline personality disorder, and psychosis. Doctors suspect traumatic brain injuries from car. Testimony and old court documents back up claims of torture and neglect for almost all of her life. In some ways, prison has been a blessing. Montgomery is no longer abused and has mental health treatment and medication.
She did maintain a connection with her children while in prison, and she fully accepted responsibility of the crime she committed. Not only did she accept responsibility, she did show remorse. Then on January 13th, 2021, she was executed. Only around 2% of inmates on death row are women, and nationwide, only 54 women have actually been executed since 1900. So my question for you, do you think that Lisa deserved execution? Do you think that she should have continued getting psychiatric help instead? Because clearly she needed it. It's a really hard one because here she is, she commits this horrible, unforgivable act, but she suffered so much in her life. Obviously, I don't think she should be forgiven. I don't think she should be walking out free or anything like that. But do you think that she suffered enough and maybe getting the help that she should have been receiving all along? I mean, I've had my own experiences, nothing to that extent, but I can't imagine how horrible. And then on the flip side, you know, Bobby Jo's family, they lost their daughter. They, you know, every year her daughter, Victoria Jo, is going to think about, you know, the day that she was born, she lost her mom. And that's something so horrible. I want to know all your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. I know this was a really, really heavy topic. As heavy as this topic was, I do think it's important to talk about heavy topics sometimes. Any other cases that you want me to dive into, definitely make sure to comment them down below. Make sure to like this video, hit the subscribe button. And until next time, I love you guys. Bye.